primary state where there's a lot of focus already. But no matter who becomes the presumptive Republican nominee, we do know America is clamoring for a real plan to stop the border crisis that is now affecting every state. Our first guest tonight, well, he's been in Congress just a few months. He's already had an enormous impact. America is clamoring for a real plan to stop the border crisis that is now affecting every state. Our first guest tonight, well, he's been in Congress just a few months. He's already had an enormous impact. One of the most straightforward talking members of Congress. He calls it like he sees it. He, of course, served in the military for many years bravely before joining our Congress. Joining us right now from the great state of Arizona, Congressman Eli Crane. Congressman, good to have you on the show, sir.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
You have been such a clarion voice on why we need to get the border under control, national security, humanitarian crisis. This week, the dam broke. We're going to see these historic numbers unending until Joe Biden does something. Tell us what you see in your home state of Arizona, which is on the front lines of this.
Well, you're going to continue to see this invasion get just worse, John. And many of us knew when we saw the then candidate Biden during his presidential race, basically rolling out the red carpet for anybody that wanted to come to this country. Many of us knew it was going to be a complete disaster and started screaming about it at that point. Now we're to the point where we've had more illegals come into this country than we've ever had. We have, over 100,000 fentanyl deaths, and so much more from MS-13 gang members, sex trafficking, you name it. It's a complete disaster. It's only going to get worse. And the worst thing about it is, John, is that you'll when you're interviewing or interrogating Secretary Mayorkas, they will sit there and lie to your face about having operational control over the southern border and how much good that they're doing. And it just, I don't know what surprises me more, how quickly they're destroying our sovereignty or the fact that they will deadpan lie to your face about it.
Yeah.
Well, and Congressman, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm curious how you think this is going to play with Democrats next year, because if you just listen to what Secretary Mayorkas says with respect to having complete and total control of the border, that's one message. But the proof is in the pudding. And as more people are pouring across the border and heading into the interior of the country, even majority blue areas like Chicago, you've got people who are saying, we don't want this in our communities. And Democrats, even though they see Mayorkas saying one thing, they're going to experience something else in their communities. We're used to immigration being a big issue with Republicans, but is this going to rise up the priority list for Democrats next year too?
Oh, I think it absolutely is. And the reason for that is because, many of the byproducts, a lot of the carnage that you see from this, like fentanyl doesn't kill Republicans or Democrats or independents. It kills indiscriminately. It kills everybody. So you have Democrat parents that are losing their children, Republican parents that are losing their children. You have MS-13 gang members that, are, threatening, using violence to intimidate and harm Democrats, Republicans, etc. This stuff doesn't know any political party. And so there comes a point where the policy, the political games, they go away once things start getting serious enough. And I think that's what you're going to see with this, as the faucet gets turned on, as Title 42 ends. And I'm hoping that, this administration, Secretary Mayorkas, President Biden, will do the right thing by the American people, because ultimately, after protecting their unalienable God-given rights, this is their number one priority, to protect the American people. And everybody knows that they're not doing it.
Yeah, you talked about the misinformation campaign that the Biden administration is inflicting on the American public. One of the false statements is this is a Republican problem. They haven't done anything on immigration or the border. Simply not true. Your colleagues on the House Judiciary Committee, along with you, created H.R. 2. It has lots of ideas that have proven to work in the past that imposes the legislation. Tell us what Republicans really have done. We're going to ignore the Biden administration's false claim here. We want to hear from you what this bill will really do.
Yeah, so I've got a list in front of me. I'm just going to go down it. Resuming border wall construction. That's a big deal. People have known since the beginning of time that walls do work. Is it security by itself? No, but real security is overlapping deterrence, okay? We've got the bolstering of CBP staffing. We're going to hire and train 22,000 Border Patrol agents. Modernizing and enhancing technology. That's a big part of security, and appropriating the funds to do that. Demanding transparency from DHS, requiring a monthly report on gotaways, which currently we're not getting. Addressing CBP retention, supporting local law enforcement, and limiting the use of CBP One app. Those are hard, concrete steps that we are taking, and we're going to be voting on this week to try and help out with this crisis that we're seeing at the southern border, John.
Yeah, so important.
Congressman, I wanted to hone in on one of those tactics that you spoke about in H.R. 2 regarding the border wall, because our network has been covering the border crisis for a long time. One of our colleagues, Ben Berkwam, is there all the time. And I know that the situation used to be that there were materials just sitting there at the border because, as we all know, that money was already allocated to complete construction in certain areas of the border wall. Is that still the case, that money is there? In many cases, the materials are there. So why not continue?
Yes, Amanda, it is. As a matter of fact, about, I think, 6 or 7 weeks ago, some of my colleagues from Homeland Security went down to El Paso, Texas. We took a helicopter ride. We were flying over the border wall, and we saw stacks of steel barrier and wall just sitting there rusting out in the sun, along with some of the other infrastructure that had already been paid for by the American taxpayer. And that's one of the most frustrating things about this, guys, is we are over $30 trillion in debt, as you guys know. We've already paid for a lot of this security that, if it wouldn't have been stopped on day one of the Biden administration, would be helping to keep Americans safe. Not only did they stop it, but then they re-implemented policies that don't work. They killed policies that were working. And now, again, they will sit there, look at your face, and tell you they have operational control and they're trying to protect American citizens.
Yeah, it's just stunning. Sir, Judiciary Committee under Jim Jordan, Oversight Committee under Congressman Comer have done a lot to expose what went on in the Biden family. And you served on the front lines of our defense in the military. You've been in foreign countries. When foreign countries now know that Joe Biden and his son and the family were looking for oligarchs in corrupt companies and trying to turn millions around, what message does that send to our allies and our enemies across this globe?
Well, to our enemies, it sends a sign that says we're open for business. We're open for corruption. We're open to the highest bidder. Everybody knew that this guy was completely corrupted. Now we have the receipts and the proof. It'll be interesting to see what happens, John. I don't know what's worse, the fact that this man is our president and commander in chief, or the fact that our DOJ, I believe, knew about it and did nothing about it. And to our allies, it shows that, you know, they can't trust us. They can't count on us. They saw that in Afghanistan. I think that's why you're seeing a reshuffling of the global chessboard. And it's got to be very concerning for some of our allies that are in very precarious, dangerous situations like Taiwan and Israel.
Yeah.
Congressman, very quickly before we go, John mentioned your military service as a Navy SEAL, and you now serve veterans on that committee in the House. How frustrating is it on the Veterans Affairs Committee to hear this president, this administration talk about how the GOP is cutting efforts and funding for veterans?
It's extremely frustrating, guys. I'm a member of the House Freedom Caucus. You guys probably know that. The House Freedom Caucus was the architect of many of the cuts that we were going after. First and foremost, let me tell the American people this. Thank God that there are people up here that are actually trying to cut spending in this town. Because, like I said, we have a massive national debt problem. And what's your health care going to look like when we go completely off the economic cliff? And that's exactly where we're headed. But I will say this. I was on countless phone calls and countless meetings with the Freedom Caucus. Never at any point was anybody targeting veterans, veteran benefits. We are going after woke and weaponized federal government spending. You guys are aware of that. And that's just what happens anytime you try and change things in this town.
Congressman, we're coming up on a commercial break. What an honor to have you, sir. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the truth you delivered today. Folks, a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.